Imagine walking into your boss's office and giving notice because your writing has become your primary revenue stream, or your podcast is successful enough that you can quit your day job, or maybe having your marketing on autopilot so you can spend your time on the art career you love rather than on marketing. Are you a creative person who's great at what you do, but marketing makes you freeze? You're not alone. I help passionate, purpose-driven creatives overcome fear, find their brand voice, and build a marketing strategy that works for them. Oh yeah, I also make it easy and painless. It's never too late to grow the business you've been dreaming about. Book an introductory call with me, Rob Southgate, at southgatesmallbusiness.com today. And let's take the pain out of marketing together. Welcome to Inkblots, the show where I interview authors about their lives, writing, and the books they love. Be sure to follow the Inkblots podcast on Substack. Not only can you listen to the latest episodes, but our Substack also has interview transcriptions and links to books and other items that we talk about on the show. If you like what we're doing, please give us a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts and on YouTube. It really helps us and our sponsors out. Oh, and leave comments. We really do read and respond to every one. Now, let's get on with the show. Welcome to Inkblots. My name is Rob Southgate. Today I have with me Lawrence C. Connolly, who, if you don't know, you are missing out. You are going to really love this interview. You're going to find it to be fascinating. I love how I'm setting that up, telling you what you're going to think. You're also going to think that you should send money to the show. If I've got that kind of power, why not use it, right? Okay. Enough of my shenanigans. Let's get Lawrence in here. Lawrence, welcome to the show.
It's great to be here. Thanks for inviting me.
Oh, I'm so excited to talk to you. Reading through all the things you've done, you are my kind of creator. I'll tell you that right now.
Thank you.
So, Lawrence, why don't you tell people a little bit about yourself, give a little background, and then we can kind of get into what we've got you on here for some of your writing.
Terrific. Yeah. Well, I've been writing since 1980. First story came out in the magazine, Amazing Stories. My early stories appeared there and in Twilight Zone magazine and in Year's Best Horror. And I was very fortunate that very early on, some of my stories began getting optioned for film. And an option does not mean that the film is going to be made. It just simply means that you get paid for doing nothing. You know, you get paid for having written the story. So a few of those films did get made, and it was enough to keep me in the game. And one of those stories that was optioned way back in 1993, actually, to give you an idea of how long this stuff takes, finally was released as part of Nightmare Cinema, Mick Garris's Nightmare Cinema in 2019. So what's that, 27 years? I mean, so writing is a long game. And I learned that at the very beginning, and it is what has kept me in it all these years. I do enjoy the process. I enjoy the success when it comes, but I understand that there are going to be lean years and there are going to be great years, but it all evens out. And so I'm still here, I'm still playing, and still happy to be part of the scene.
Well, and for those of you that aren't into like horror cinema, you may not know it, but Mick Garris is fantastic. That's a big name. In fact, he has a podcast on the Shudder Network, I believe,
Yes.
which is, I binged it. It took me a couple of weeks, but I could not stop listening to it. He is so fascinating. That's got to be a dream. That's fantastic. So congratulations on that, Lawrence.
Yeah, thank you.
And your perseverance paid off. Waiting it out. You did it.
Yeah, you got to. You have to like the process. You have to like what you're doing, and if you enjoy writing, if you enjoy being part of the literary scene, then you don't mind the long periods between the stories and the books and the successes and the movies. I think it's a good life. I wouldn't trade it for anything.
Well, that's where you want to be, right there. So let's talk about your newest upcoming project. And then we're going to talk about all sorts of things. I want to talk about this. You've got a new book coming out. I'm going to let you talk about it.
Sure. Well, the new book comes out October 14th, so possibly it will be out when this podcast drops. But this is a story. It's titled Minutemen, Execute and Run. And it takes place, we like to say it takes place the day after tomorrow. Technology is continuing to advance at lightning speed. Old wars are still raging, and young, able bodied people are still trying to make a difference and paying the price for it. And this story is about four wounded warriors who pay the price, return home, broken, forgotten, but they are given a second chance by a biotech firm that has a revolutionary treatment that will restore their abilities. At least that's what they are told. And so they undergo the treatment, they get their abilities back, but something strange happens. There's a side effect that they didn't anticipate. And that is that the things that were disabilities, the parts of their bodies that were injured, can now become supercharged. And yet they're not superheroes. They're just people. So a person channeling a superpower is going to burn out really fast. And that's the title, Minutemen. They have about a minute to use their power. It's pretty good when they're on, but when they're down, they are completely vulnerable. I mean, imagine this group behind enemy lines, and they are using their powers one after the other, and they are dropping one after the other. And the people who are left standing have got to figure out how to protect the people who are down and get them out alive and continue the mission. So that's our story. You see, because they're very different people. They don't agree on a lot of things, but they know they've got to work together because teamwork is their only option. Going it alone is their kryptonite. And that's the story of Minutemen.
Oh, I love it. So, not to give any spoilers here, but they have 1 minute to use these powers, and then they fall, and they've got to be pulled out. Do they get recharged, or is it no? You're a husk, and you're over.
No, they get recharged. At first, they are completely incapacitated, and they will be completely incapacitated for a little while. Now, it could be an hour, it could be 2 hours, but it's long enough that if they're behind enemy lines, they are going to be a great liability.
Yeah,
now,
incredibly
but when
vulnerable.
but when they come back, they're not superpowered. They cannot superpower again for hours. They've got to build up their energy. They've got to sleep. They've got to eat. They've got to do all the things that we do to our bodies to make sure that we've got energy. Because again, even though they have superpowers, they are not super people. They are not superheroes per se. And so they can return to power up another day, but not for a mission that maybe is going to take one night. That they're going to have their 1 minute, and then they are going to become a liability. And so they have to plan a great deal going in. They have to really decide for every eventuality to make sure that they can get every person out alive. And so some of the fun of writing this was writing scenarios where it would look impossible going in, but they would plan. And they would come up with a scheme, and of course, things don't always go as planned. They have to plan for eventualities, and then they sometimes just have to think on their feet because everything that they thought would go wrong has gone wrong, plus more, and now they've got to think on the fly. They're very exciting characters. They're interesting characters. The characters. My brother and I created them. My brother actually created the first round of characters back in 2018. You know, writers will often say, and I do agree with this, that if anybody ever comes up to you and says, I've got an idea, tell you what, you're a writer, I've got an idea, you write it, we'll split the proceeds, right? That's not a deal because writers got plenty of ideas.
Right.
But my brother had more than an idea. He's a graphic artist. His name is Christopher Connolly. He's brilliant. And he had spent maybe a year, maybe more, just compiling this portfolio of characters. And he sketched them out. He drew storyboards. He just had all this stuff written out and drawn out. And he didn't share it with me until he knew he had something to share, something that would impress me. And when I did look at that stuff, I said, I've got to be involved. So we started off then with the characters that he created, together, collaborating. We added a few more, and this has been going on since 2018. And I really feel like I know these characters. The book is coming out now, many years later, many years after Chris pitched the idea to me. But I really feel like I know these people. I've spent so much time with them. I really like them. And it's fun scheming with them. It's fun putting them into danger. And oftentimes, and I know other writers on your show have talked about this, and sometimes they surprise me. I don't know how they're going to get out, but they know how they're going to get
They
out.
know. And that's what I was going to ask you. As you're describing this, I'm thinking of some of these past interviews and how writers hear their characters and have those relationships with their characters. Obviously, they surprise you some.
Yes.
Do you feel that there are times where maybe you've plotted things out and surprise, surprise, they have a completely different idea of what's going to happen?
Absolutely. That happens quite a bit. And we've had these conversations about, are you a plotter or a pantser?
Right.
And actually, I think, I think it's all pantsing, because whether you're sitting down to outline or you're sitting down to write something straight through, you're flying by the seat of your pants. So the way I like to work is I like to use a beat board where I will lay out maybe 10 or a dozen beats, things that I know I want to happen in a section of the story. And I will get those all in order. I want them to be very interesting, exciting, and I want to always be heading towards something new and interesting. And I'll lay those out, and then I'll start to write. And inevitably, I'll get partway through, and one of the characters will take me in a whole new direction. And I go back to the beat board, I'll rearrange the beats, I'll enhance the beats. And so not only am I collaborating with my brother Christopher, but I'm also collaborating with the Minutemen as I'm writing this. And that's what's fun.
Right.
Yeah.
Oh, I love it. I love it very much. What would you say? I mean, I know that Christopher, we're ultimately going to say, is the inspiration for this, but as you're writing this, I mean, obviously we get inspired by things. What would you say were the biggest inspirations for this story?
Well, Chris tells the story, and actually he has in the book, people who get the book will be able to read an afterword that Chris has in the book. And the inspiration was after 9/11. Chris is an entrepreneur as well as a graphic artist. And one of the things that got him so successful as a graphic artist is that he was very adept at setting up an advertising agency that he ran in New York back in the 90s. And so as an entrepreneur and as an artist, after 9/11, he wanted to do his part. And so he started a company called Bomb Dog International. And he teamed up with a Marine, Ryan Haynes, and they formed this company. And what they would do is they would take trained dogs into places where people were going to have meetings and gatherings, and they would sniff for bombs. And other Marines were involved, and Chris got to know these folks, and he got to know how selfless they were, and he began to develop a sense that everyone, not just Marines, but everyone is wounded. Everyone is carrying around baggage of some kind. Everyone has something inside that they guard, that they know is a liability. And they're very aware of it, but they don't often talk about it. And of course, veterans are known for being this way. But anyone who suffers a trauma is not going to talk directly about that trauma, but they are going to talk around it. Well, Chris picked up on this. He's very intuitive. And that became the inspiration for this story. These wounded warriors who come back and they're forgotten, and they can't really talk about what they've been through, and they can't really talk about where they're hurting or what they want people to do for them. But out of the blue, here comes this biotech firm, and it seeks them out because their genetics are just right.
Oh yeah, I'm sure they're targeted.
Right. And so they are brought in to this treatment that they didn't fully anticipate. And so to answer your question, the genesis for the story began when Chris was working with Bomb Dog International. And as he tells the story, the concept for the 1 minute power, kind of just zapped into his brain all at once. Now, there's one more thing I should tell you. He's a wrestler, among other things.
Okay.
He was a wrestler in high school. And one of his trainers instilled in him this belief that the human body can only sustain a certain amount of energy, and then it shuts down. but the amount of energy that it can channel is far greater than what we think it is. And he said that when he was in training, his coach would push the wrestlers to the limit. And the wrestlers would complain. They would say, we can't go on. We can't practice anymore. And he would say, listen, when you are out of power, you will know it because you won't be able to say you're out of power.
Right.
Do those laps again, So that's another part of the inspiration, and that is actually in the novel. I like that story so much that I put it in the novel. One of the characters is also a wrestler, and he flashes back to a time when he learned that lesson that we can push ourselves to a limit far beyond what we think we can push, but when we hit that limit, there's nothing we can do. We are down.
Right. Well, and that limit doesn't necessarily mean you're dead. It means you have to stop.
That's right.
Which is very interesting because you often hear that language from people where they say, oh, I can't do another thing. Oh, I'm just going to die. It's like, no, you still got something in the tank. You're not done yet.
Right.
You're not done. So I love that. I think that's fascinating. So I'm looking at your catalog of work here, and I'm obviously seeing quite a bit of horror. What is it about horror? What has drawn you to horror?
Well, what happened was I started off writing science fiction. And that was, so my first stories for amazing stories were science fiction stories. And then I wrote a horror story. And if I can think back, what compelled me to write a horror story? This was the very early 80s. And a young writer, Stephen King, is making a name for himself. And I'm reading his stories. I started off with Night Shift, and then I began reading every one of his novels as they came out. And I just loved the way he was telling stories. And because they were not science fiction, some had science fiction elements in them, like Firestarter. Mm-hmm. But since they were not primarily science fiction, they seemed to be more centered on characters that I recognized, people that I knew in my life, people like me. And I liked that. So I wanted to play in that sandbox. Mm-hmm. And so I wrote a horror story, and I sent it off to Amazing Stories. Now, they're primarily a science fiction market, but they would occasionally take horror. And I didn't hear back from them right away, so I wrote another one. I sent it off to them. And turned out they took the first one, and they bounced the second. Now, this same time, a new magazine is coming out. It's being published by the people who put out Gallery, I think it was. Okay. Penthouse did Omni, right? Penthouse had their science fiction magazine. So Gallery wanted their horror magazine.
Sure.
So they launched Rod Serling's Twilight Zone, this big mass market magazine edited by Ted Klein. And so I said, well, what the heck? I got nothing to lose. I'll take this story that bounced from Amazon, or that bounced from Amazing, and I'll send it to Rod Serling's Twilight Zone. And they took it. So I wrote them another one, and they took it. Now, here's when it gets really fun, because now I hear from Carl Edward Wagner, who is editing Year's Best Horror, and he says, I'd like your first story that you wrote for Twilight Zone. I'd like to put it in Year's Best Horror. And then
fantastic.
And then it sells to him. And then I run into him again. I run into him in person in Chicago at the World Fantasy Convention. And he says, hey, what else do you have? I said, well, I got another story in Twilight Zone. He said, oh, yeah, that's right. I've seen it. You're on. That was my second sale to Year's Best Horror. So I'm having fun. I'm thinking, this is pretty good. Oh, and then somebody gets in touch with me. I come home late one night, and my wife says, Hollywood called. And I thought she was kidding. Turns out somebody wanted to option one of those stories that went to Year's Best Horror. So, I figure, well, what the heck? This stuff is, I'm having fun writing it because it's about people like me. It's about the world that I live in.
You're enjoying the process. And
I'm selling the stuff. So that was pretty much how the transition to horror began. And so with Minutemen, I'm sort of moving back into science fiction, but I got to tell you, there's some really cool body horror in Minutemen. People are going to love it. And if that's not enough, there's some killer rodents too.
Oh, fantastic. That's always scary. So, it's interesting to me, the lines and the boxes that we put things in. to me, I'm a big science fiction reader. I'm a big sci-fi reader. I already said science fiction. I'm a big horror reader. And to me, there are so many elements that match up. Horror sci-fi is one of my favorites, but you're right. It has to have that connection. The sterile science fiction doesn't do it for me. I read a Harlan Ellison story.
Yeah.
These can be science fiction. They can be horrific. There's the elements are there. And I absolutely love that. So you saying like, oh, well, all of a sudden I'm doing this. I'm like, but are you? Because isn't science fiction it's still kind of the same sandbox. You're just playing with a different grouping of sand, right?
That's right. Yep, very much the same. I like to see there's a primary difference, but it bleeds, right?
Right.
There's no solid boundaries. But the primary difference that I see is that at the heart of science fiction is the sense that could this thing be? This is wondrous.
Yeah.
Could this actually happen? And in horror, we word it a little bit differently. We say, oh, wow, I hope that can't happen.
Right.
So it's the same thing. It all comes down to the sense of wonder, the wonderment. I wonder if this can happen. I hope this can't happen. Yeah.
I always look at horror as being the one that gets the bigger emotional reaction, which is something that in things I do, I always strive for. So I think that's where, to me, there's a dividing line. Even though science fiction can be great and you get invested in everything, horror doesn't mean it's a monster in the closet. But if anything lives with me, it's those horror stories I've read.
That's right.
Yeah. You mentioned Night Shift. That was the same entry point for me. I was done. I read that and went, okay, now my collection of horror is going to take over my shelf because wow, the ideas,
Yeah, it was my sister-in-law that turned me on to him. We were talking one night. She said, "Have you heard of this guy, Stephen King?" This is maybe 1979. And she said, "He's twisted." And of course, I mean, the stories are a bit twisted, but there's also a lot of heart in those stories.
Oh, sure.
I became, as I say, I followed him and then began reading everything that he was doing. And then I got the opportunity to meet him when, let's see, what was the story? The one about the Wheel of Fortune, Dead Zone.
Dead Zone.
I got a chance to meet him when Dead Zone came out, and he's very gracious. And that's all these things along the line. They give you these little boosts to keep you going. And in the book that he signed for me, he wished me well with my writing. He said, "Congratulations on your sales." And it means a lot to a young guy just getting started. And
100%.
Another thing that kept me going.
It's funny. He's a guy that I've read this about him, that he's so encouraging to young writers, and that's why you see his name on every book saying, Stephen King sings this is the greatest horror. He doesn't put that if he doesn't like it, but he tends to like quite a bit, and he wants to encourage. So he's one of those guys that you can write to him, and he's going to give you a blurb because, hey, if he likes it, he wants to help you, and I think that's admirable. We had the opportunity to meet his son, Joe Hill, and Joe Hill's also just a fantastic person to meet in person. You'd feel the same way. You'd walk away feeling really good about what you're doing and wanting to do more. So we're going to shift off of your writing for a second. I'm looking at your website and I see the Law-Free Connolly Band.
That's right.
So you're a musician as well.
Been a musician, actually started in that game long before I was a writer. When I was in college, back in the when was that? Back in the 70s. It was a time when two guys with a guitar, Lockery and Connolly, could get on the coffee house circuit and just travel from state to state, from college to college, and play music. It was a great time. And whereas some kids go to college and they join a basketball team and they go around playing basketball, we went to college and we went around playing music. We had a blast, and we played together through college, and then I got out and kept the band together for a while, and then went our separate ways. And it just so happened at the same time, my brother John, a different brother, came home from the service, and he plays guitar. So we teamed up. So I was on tour with him for a while. And so I have a lot of music. And not too long ago, not too long in my years, about 15 years ago, Chris Lockery and I got together again, and we discovered we knew all the old songs, and this time we recorded them, and we did 2 albums, and the best of those albums are now available in the Best of the Lockery Connolly Band on Bandcamp. So it's Lockery Connolly.
I see that on your website, so people can check this out on Bandcamp. I can't encourage you enough. Music is so important in my family. And my daughter is going through the same thing. She's at the new school in New York, took her guitar, made friends with another student who's a jazz guitarist. And the 2 of them are playing coffee houses and playing wherever they can. And they're just having the time of their life. And she's there to be a writer. So I get this. I'm going to turn her onto this too, because folk and punk folk are her real wheelhouse. She goes right to those. So
good.
I'm sure she will love this.
Well, that's great. You know, the thing is, as I say, I got into it before I was a writer. When my brother and I were playing, particularly, because when Christopher Lockery and I were playing, we were primarily playing weekends. We would go on tour on the weekend, then come back to go to college. But when my brother and I were playing, it was steady 5 nights. I mean, we were playing around the city 5 nights a week. And my wife was working at a bank, so I would, our gig would end at 2:00, and then everybody in the pub would have to go out to breakfast, right? So we would all go out to breakfast, and I'd finally roll in the house around 5:00 in the morning, and my wife's just going to get up in an hour, and she gets up, she goes to work, and then I get up around noon, go out to my brother's place, and we practice, and then we go play again. And I got to thinking, there's got to be a way to be an artist and not be up all night and not, be living a life where your wife is kind of your stranger. So that was when I started to try to write, and that's how I got into the writing game, because I figured if I'm writing, I can still create, but I can stay at home. Right. But of course, now what I do is I do both anyhow, so it doesn't matter.
Well, and then you also did some podcasting, which is the same thing. When my daughter was young, we started the podcasting thing. It kept me home, kept things so that we could be with my family. But my God, the amount of time you spend doing it and the content creation, and then you end up doing all those other things to keep you out of the house. It's just how it is. Now, a question here. I'm seeing you did a soundtrack to Veins, one of your books. Is this a practice that you've gone into of making soundtracks to your books?
Well, my novel Veins was picked up by a really exciting company back in 2008. They were called Fantasist Enterprises, and they are run by a fellow named William H. Horner, terrific guy. Now they're a small press. They expanded quickly, and then they stopped putting out books. They do other things now. But it was fun working with them when they were on the rise. And one of the things that I knew Will Horner wanted to do was bring out music that would be connected to the books. And he actually had an arrangement set up with a band that was going to do this, but it fell through. And so I knew about that. So I said, well, I got a band. How about if I make some music for my novel?
Oh, I love it.
He liked it. And so he backed the project. And so we came up with an EP. What I was able to do was team with the bass player from the Lockery Connolly Band. And he's a bass player and a drummer. And with me playing the guitars and him taking care of the rhythm section, we were able to do this instrumental EP called Veins, the Soundtrack, which had music that was inspired by the novel. It's all instrumental music. It's very strange music. I play the guitar with an EBow on the tracks, and an EBow is a device that causes the strings of a guitar to vibrate, much like the strings of a violin. Mm-hmm. It creates incredible sounds. And so on the CD, I am playing both regular electric guitar, but also EBow guitar, and there are no vocals, so they're all instrumentals. It's an exciting project, and of course people can hear some of it at my website. They just simply need to go to lawrenceconnolly.com, and then there's a /music, and so right at the music tab they should be able to find all of that.
It's right where I am, and in fact you have lit my brain on fire. You are exactly the type of artist that I enjoy. My dad was an avant-garde jazz musician. So when you're talking about it's strange, it's playing with sounds, I'm like, yeah, half of my collection is strange and playing with sounds. And this idea of the soundtrack, I don't know if you were a Mike Nesmith fan at all.
Oh, yes.
But he did an album way back called The Prison, which I don't know if you know the prison, but he wrote it as if it's a soundtrack. So when you're supposed to read the liner notes, which is almost a book, while you listen to the music, and it's this fantastic experience. And I've always wondered, how come, like, this was not a normal practice, and seeing you do this here makes me really excited. I definitely want to check this out and watch it together. I listen to it together because it just enhances the experience with the artist.
Yeah. Yeah, and it was fun putting it together, and I was so glad that Will Horner backed the project. As I say, I think they released their last book. It was one of my books in 2014, and they've since gone on to other things. The company's still there, but now they're doing web design and editorial services and things like that. But he was one of the best editors, is one of the best editors I've ever worked with, and I hope one of these days he gets back into bringing out books. But those were fun times.
So people go to your website, lawrenceconnolly.com. We've got stuff about your stage work, your screenplays, your the movies, TV, novels, collections, stories, audio, the music. It's all here, right? Another thing that stuck out to me, and this is going to be a kind of weird if people don't listen to my other things. At my heart, I'm a marketer. I've got an MBA in marketing. This is my thing. And I do a show called Pour Over Marketing. And one of the drums I beat is that you need to have a Substack. And I see you've got this nice big Substack logo on here, and you just light me up. So I want to also encourage people to follow your Substack, because to me, that's one of the most exciting things in this like new media, social media world. I love it. Tell me about your Substack a little bit.
Yes, so the Substack, and I do hope people will check it out because I think it's a very special thing we're doing there. It is conentertainment.substack.com. So that's con, C-O-N, as in Connolly, and then com, C-O-M, as in communications, entertainment.substack.com. And my brother and I decided to put this together to promote Minutemen. Our book went up for pre-sale very early. We had no control over that, but the book went up for pre-sale in May. And I said to Chris, if this book's up for pre-sale in May, we better do something. So we began putting together this newsletter. Now, here's what's special about this newsletter. And, maybe, I don't know, it's not as if there aren't other newsletters that do these things, but what we want to do is offer people kind of a glimpse behind the scenes of what went into the Minutemen. And so we're including artwork, lots of artwork from Chris's portfolio, lots of artwork from other concept artists that we've worked with that are helping put together the project, because we weren't only working on the novel. We also have a film, in development. And one of the things that we needed to pitch the film was lots of storyboards. Mm-hmm. So we're taking these storyboards and we're putting them in the newsletter. And then we're editing some of the storyboards into dramatic videos, 1-minute videos that tell a story, an episode of the Minutemen. And so not only do you get pictures that Chris created that were concept art, but also other art by other artists and videos that we've created and music, because we have a Minuteman theme song that Chris wrote the words to and that I wrote the music and Dwayne and I play. So just lots and lots of stuff. And if that's not enough, in each newsletter, we've got these newsletter challenges where there's some aspect of writing or of filmmaking that we've talked about in the newsletter. And so we wrap everything up with a related challenge. So, for example, on one newsletter that dealt with the need to edit your work, you have to cut out some of your favorite stuff sometimes. We have to kill your darlings, right? Yep. And so we had a challenge where we had 6 thumbnails taken from 6 movies, and each thumbnail represented a deleted scene, a scene that the director decided needed to come out to make the movie better. And we asked people to identify those, and people who could identify them got a free copy of the book. So, they got a promise for the free copy of the book.
Right. When it's out, yes.
When it's out. But so I do hope people check it out. I think it's a very cool newsletter. I see a lot of newsletters. I see a lot of amazing newsletters, and I see a lot of newsletters that are kind of dull. This is, I hope, going toward the amazing. I hope so.
Well, it's thought out. I'm loving it. I subscribed. And in fact, I'm going to talk about it on Pour Over Marketing because I do beat this drum all the time. And I talk about the options, how to make it interesting, how to make it different, how to make it so it's worth your reader's time. You got to have value. And already I'm seeing value all over this. This is a great example of what you can do with this. I'm on your one about the Countdown Begins, where it's got the public domain heroes on there, and Dollman and Fantima.
Right.
I love it. I think it's so fantastic to see that stuff. The other one I want to highlight is you've got just one post that you have one about rotoscoping, which I find fascinating, but you have one that shows the old 2004 Revolutionary War Soldiers ads.
Right.
Man, our childhood was full of those ads, wasn't it?
That's right. It was. Yeah.
I mean, I think I even ordered these at only $1.98. Come on.
I know. Go for it. And of course, you could also order a monkey for about $15 if you wanted to.
Imagine how horrifying that is.
Yeah.
So I have a story about a monkey that I'm not going to tell on the air here because it's not family friendly. But my friend that I had worked with, there used to be I'm going to tell this part of it, and then I'll tell you the other part when we're off.
Okay.
People that want to hear the other part are going to have to subscribe to my Substack at some point. So there was a pet store at this big mall by us when we were kids in the 70s, and they had a monkey, and every kid I knew obsessed about the fact that they had a monkey. We all wanted it. Christmas lists always included the monkey from this pet store, and fortunately, our parents did not do it. Well, my friend, his dad did it one time.
All right.
And he said, I got the monkey. I said, you're kidding me. He said, oh, no, I hated that thing. And I said, really? And we'll just say it embarrassed him. When we're off of here, I'm going to tell you the quick story of why it embarrassed him. But don't get a monkey, folks. Don't do it. It's not going to end well. Or at least, at the very least, you're going to be so embarrassed, you'll go, oh, God, why did we do this? So there we go, Lawrence. Enough about monkeys. I am so fascinated. I love everything you're doing. I'm going to invite you back on other shows. As I told you beforehand, you're going to be on Alley Chats. We have to talk about things there. Best of luck with this book. I encourage everybody to purchase it. I'll put links in the show notes where you can buy the various things. I'll put a link to your website and your Substack as well, because we live in an amazing time where you have this kind of access with the artists, and the artists that embrace that, as you are, we can really have a lot of fun together. So, Lawrence, thank you so much, and the best of luck with this. I can't wait to read this book. It sounds just so in my wheelhouse.
Well, thank you so much. This has been great being here, and I really appreciate you inviting me on. I've had a blast.
Great. And next time we'll get it so it doesn't sound like garbage. I don't know what's wrong with my internet, but hopefully the recording sounds okay. If not, send your hate mail to me. I'll deal with it. Thanks a lot, Lawrence. Have a wonderful launch of this book.
Thank you. Thank you so much.